Welcome you all. My name is DAG, DAG van WETTER, and I'm from Flanders in Belgium. I'm quite passionate about open dialogue, but I'm not the only one, and that's the story. And I'm trying to tell you about. I will be reserving some time at the end of my talk to discuss or answer questions, and you can leave them in the chat. Nadia is helping me with that. Okay, I'll start. So the title is something that really means a lot to us because we use the word companions a lot. I think it will become clear why we use that word so much. We pronounce it, of course, a little bit different in our language. We say compagnons. That's really the same meaning than the English word companion, but maybe you will pick up what we understand with it. Okay, yeah, open dialogue in Flanders. In case you never heard about Flanders, no problem. We are just a small part of a small country in a big world, but we are proud to be part of our country and Europe, but surely part of an open dialogue movement. And even if we are little, and recently there was a concert from Susan Vega here in Bruges, where I live, and she sang about David and Goliath, and that reminded me that we are small too, and you see a little bit of the lyrics from that song. Not so small to you is so large to me, just the rock in this pocket. What we mean by it is that we really started to believe in something, and that grew out of it. Our open dialogue practice grew out of that. Talking about believing in something, we really realize that it's always important to start from why we do things, not from what should we do or how should we do it, but why should we do it. And I think that's the story about our open dialogue practice. We started discussing why do we want to do things differently, and then finding out how we could do that, and then finding out what we could do without repeating ourselves, what we could do again and again, all over again. So that's part of the story. And the story of our open dialogue practice in Flanders starts in an even a more smaller region in the northwest of Flanders. We call it Circuit Psychose. That's a care circuit psychosis. I show you this picture because it was a peer worker who made it for us as a logo, but even more as a sort of trying to help us what we were trying to do, by showing how natural it could be, like the animals or birds on a wire. They are trying to connect with each other, but still they have to go their own way. And the subtitle Verbindend Spreken stands for a connective way of listening and speaking to each other, finding that. So that was something that peer worker wanted to give us back with that picture, with that logo. We started that collaboration in 2009, really with the purpose, and that's the why, that we had to rethink mental health practice across organizations, not within our own organization, but across organizations. And also in connection with the people themselves who are suffering from something, and also the people around. So we really felt that we need connection, we need to connect between organizations, between teams, but of course, starting from connecting with the people themselves. With really the purpose that and the thinking that we really, if we really want to learn to work differently, then let's do this together. Don't do it alone. Find your companions. Where the word companion is up. We started with organizing initiatives in support of family and other close relatives. We did it together with those people, of course. We started with some kind of information and dialogue and coping groups, but then we realized that it wasn't enough, because even if it was quite interactive, people stayed at the parking lot afterwards to talk about it further. And then we realized that sort of dialogue groups is not enough. Let's give those people still standing and discussing and exchanging on the parking lot something to drink, and maybe we can make a cafe, a bar. So then we started the STEM, that means the voice. That's the dialogue cafe psychosis. And that was really something that we had to do, and we had to do together with them, and not focusing on the information. It always starts with someone who tells something that can be a quite famous speaker or panel that discusses something, or a short movie, but it's just the aperitif for the rest of the evening. So it loosens the tongues to speak around the tables. So just minor focus on information, maximum focus on dialogue. And we were not, we had not planned to join the tables as professionals, but people asked us to come join them. We were quite surprised because we thought it would be better that they could talk freely and not that we wouldn't interfere. But from that feeling of not willing to interfere, we started to listen and not giving advice, not stumbling over our own expertise. We started being a participant, even more than we did before. Not only seeking to connect, but apparently giving support more than we ever did. And moreover, learn from each person that was talking around those tables. And that reminded us about our drive, that we wanted to be experts without stumbling over our own expertise. We really were searching for a way to first listen and then just carefully reach into our backpacks where the expertise maybe is, but not confronting people with our advice without first listening. And then we started a mobile early intervention team, Psychosis. At first, we had to follow a protocol to help people with that team, but we chose not to follow that protocol, but just every time that we met people in the first meeting, the only purpose was that first meeting is just to have a next meeting. No agenda, no protocol, just listening, meeting people, letting them speak with us, letting them speak and listen to each other. And we soon realized that what we already thought was so important, that mental health care needs really a more breed, a larger focus. Also the people around need to be fully involved, and not only fully involved, but also heard and supported. And that team was quite stubborn about that.
Sorry, DAG, just one quick question. Was all these initiatives were within the national health system? Or is
well, yeah, partly. So we were in one of those regions of the national health reform, but in the region of Northwest Flanders, we even made a smaller network, trying to do it different, more different than the national government asked us. So within that network, that official network, we started a smaller network, trying to change the system and also the mission from the national government from the inside out. So rethinking what was our mission. So it started within that national reform, but we tried to change our mission from the inside out, if that makes sense. And we did it not only together across organizations, but together with people that were involved as a patient, as a client, as family members, because in the national reform, those people were not that much involved with us. And we should learn from them. That was our mission. And then there were many conferences about client participation and family participation, promoting client and family participation. But then we realized that it was always about convincing each other why we should participate, clients and family in their own treatment, in their own lives, and we thought that isn't the right thing. That isn't the right thinking. They are already participating. Who should participate? We should participate in what they are doing. We should participate and support what's important for them. So we realized that we would have to change the vision on client participation, because client participation and family participation initiatives always started from some ideas of including people's own goals, but we really realized that it's their goals and we have to participate. So we should do it the other way around. And that reminded us that mental health care is all about seeking connection. And then maybe there are some Dutch people in the workshop, because Jim van Os, that's a psychiatrist of Holland, he wrote a book about personal diagnostics. In that book, he promotes, next to the official diagnostics, to search for the answer on or dialogue on 4 questions. Who are you? What happened to you? What's your vulnerability, your resilience? What are your strengths and your resources? And where do you want to go? What do you need? And we wanted to add some questions. Who is already connected to you? Who can we connect with? That felt quite important, because we really felt that the word companion or compagnon in Flemish is something that helped us act in another way and speak to people in another way. Thinking together with the people, how can we be supportive as your companions? Who are now already are your companions? Who are our companions? Who do we want to work with? Who do we feel connection with as professionals? And are there any other companions we could involve? We really wanted to learn to act more flexible, because we realized that what's worked well in a previous meeting or in a previous family, we had to do it all over again. And we really had to find some new insights and aspiring practices that from other countries that seem to work there quite well. And we really realized again that we should dare to turn the system inside out from within as professionals, together with the people themselves, and daring to change ourselves. And then there was a report that we remembered about from two Dutch ladies. It was in 2008, so it was quite new, but it didn't change practice until that we thought, but it was quite interesting that they had a research on the different roles that family, friends, and other close relatives are in, as a support person for the client, for instance, as a source for information. And there's again the connection with some of the questions of Jim van Os on personal diagnostics, but also an informal caregiver, often also a first crisis manager, also an advocate who can think about some other questions, looking in the future, looking what people need. And in another way, also overwhelmed and distraught too, because they also feel a mental overload and also needing support because they are mourning, they have fears, they have doubts, they experience lack of understanding from others, and they are often quite feeling as isolated as the person himself, herself. The conclusion of that report was something that really touched us, because it said that the question about involving family and friends and others, there was a tendency in practice that no, we can't do that unless the person is asking it. That we had to change it to yes, of course we do it, but of course we involve the person himself or herself, and it's quite easy. Because we can always, when we meet people, so also family and friends who reach out to us, without giving information, without breaking our professional secrecy, we can just ask, and how are you? And just listen what they want to talk about. It's so easy. And it's so tragic if we won't do that. We heard so many stories of people that were still quite angry at us because we didn't ask how they were doing. And we already thought if we can ask those questions to people, and the person himself or the person herself is included, then we're just listening to each other. That would be a good thing, and that could give us a chance to reconnect people to each other, to their own resources. So that was another thing that stimulated our why. We had to change things. Another insight that we found that there was a strange thinking about crisis, and then we found this Chinese word for crisis, and apparently in Chinese they need 2 characters for that one word, each with a different meaning. The first character refers to danger, and the second character refers to change, turning, signal or trigger to regain hold of the situation. That's not that new, because there are expressions like never waste a good crisis or in the heat of the moment that all also refer to that 2 aspects of crisis. But we rarely use that insight within mental health. Restoring safety is very important, but it's only focused on the short term. And the other aspect is more a turning point to a personal recovery process. And it's much more related to connection, to warm proximity, to nearness. So if we look at crisis in that way, crisis intervention could be a new basis or a new starting point for recovery. Because also in crisis phases, recovery starts from new experience. Of course, people are experiencing a mental overload. We can't deny that, and that's something they're suffering from, but they also are experiencing and holding on to what could be supportive for them and who could be supportive for them. People, experiences in their life history, and joining that or connecting that to the current experiences. So that gives us a mission to give them in that crisis new positive experiences. For instance, the resources in their environment, in their family that could be reinforced. And maybe experiencing us as professionals as new possible resources. So what if we could use such a crisis as an opportunity to give people new hope. So we were trying to find inspiring practices that seem to work elsewhere, and again and again we were reaching out to the ideas of open dialogue from our Finnish companions, because it felt like they already found something that we were still looking for. And of course, I'm not gonna tell too much about the 7 principles now. That's not the case, but I can say why we were so touched by it. And open dialogue is, of course, 2 key aspects: a way of being with people and a way of organizing services. But we want to connect that aspect of being with the proximity, the one proximity that I was talking about, the nearness, but also a way of organizing services, connection. So the things that I mentioned before that are so important in a crisis: proximity and connection. And that made us realize that open dialogue is not only about being with, but also doing with, because a way of organizing services together with the people, to organize our treatment, our help, our support together with them each time again. I'll put some lines that inspired us along the way. That quote of Mikhail Bakhtin is often used in relation to open dialogue for the world and consequently for the human being. There is nothing more terrible than a lack of response. It really touched us, and it reminded us of what a peer worker once told us: what is and can't be hurt so much. And it felt really as an important motive to explore open dialogue practice. Also, the idea that open dialogue can't be a treatment protocol where we repeat what we've done and what worked well in previous meetings. We have to do it all over again together with the people themselves. Also, the thing that we felt as a mission, as a motive, is that in open dialogue, without delay, we seek connection, we listen openly, and find, and together with them, are seeking a meaningful language with them and between them. That's felt as a quite important motive to have open dialogue practice. Also to start on the here and now, what people are interested in saying at that time, that people can choose themselves what we have to listen to. That's really something different than our agenda, because our agenda is not so important. It's about searching a new understanding between them. And we really believe that in that way, there's not only time to be won in a crisis situation, but also a future to be won. If we are helping everyone, listening to everyone, then we realize that it's really not just a philosophical thing that was described in the open dialogue literature, that it's stimulating a horizontal dialogue between people, but also an internal dialogue with everyone involved. The person that was suffering from a crisis, the people around, but also ourselves as professionals. And it's quite rewarding that we can reflect on what we heard, thought, and felt, on what touched us in open dialogue. It felt really an important motive again. That way, sustaining a lasting dialogue and creating a supporting network that makes full experiences or crisis more tolerable. This one is a bit more poetic, excuse me for that, but I really believe, and we often talk about it, that there's really a lot of connection with music. There's really a lot of music in the hope that grows between people in an open dialogue meeting, which enables people to go on together for a while with new plans and something to hold on to until the next meeting. That's really something that we talk about a lot. Also, the people that we help with open dialogue meetings are making the connection to music and hope. Also, the idea that we had to learn from practice, not from the theory, but that we could continuous reflection, and that we could learn from changing our own practical experiences, but also the meaningful stories that we heard from the people, and the feedback on what works and what seemed to be further needed to open dialogue practice. So that's were the motives, and that is what we did with it. It started in 2016, that in that network of Northwest Flanders, we wanted to start a pilot project on open dialogue for Flanders. We had 2 conferences. These were the first open dialogue initiatives in Belgium. Of course, Jaco was there, but also some other European open dialogue pioneers. And in that conferences, we also had extra masterclasses, not only workshops, of course, but extra masterclasses especially aimed to team members, learning open dialogue in practice, also managers, directors, policymakers, not only from the region, but also from Flanders and Belgium, and also an extra masterclass for psychiatrists about their role. That was quite important to have those extra masterclasses. Then we were quite ambitious and tried to found our own open dialogue academy, which was actually an intervision group, and next to that a reading group. But that it was quite important that we had an intervision group to exchange about our first experience in open dialogue practice, and we had a reading group that helped us explore in the background and principles, and we were supported by a professor. And we also started from that Open Dialogue Academy to prepare open dialogue training programs, because of course we realized that we couldn't train ourselves and each other. We had to involve other people like Nick Putman. So we started to discuss with Nick Putman and some other colleagues. And in 2017, with that network, we promised something to each other. Let's give priority to the development of open dialogue practice. Let's start tomorrow. That's what we said. After the 2017 conference, we were, of course, already practicing in some teams, but there was some hesitation with some team members, and then we said to each other, don't delay it much further. Meeting and with as many joint forces as possible, again and again, let's involve each other and learn to live up to the open dialogue principles and what's further needed. That was really a promise that we made to each other across organizations, across teams in that region, but of course also a promise that we did to the people and the family members themselves. Apart from that, we organized the SWOT Analysis Day on the further organization and development of open dialogue, and we involved some people from Denmark that we had met before, for instance, in our conference, to help us with that. We also made a first translation of their open dialogue process support manual that they did. It's not really a manual, it's something that reminds them of the open dialogue principles. And we were invited to participate in the founding meeting of the Open Dialogue Trainers Network in Helsinki at that time. We also had an Open Dialogue Commitment Day, that's how we called it, where we invited all our directors, managers, psychiatrists, policymakers, and the team members who were already practicing open dialogue meetings, and we invited Nick Putman to have discussions and open dialogues about that. It was really an important day, and in that meeting there were not only local policymakers but also national policymakers, and afterwards they asked us if we could help them organize a national conference on the social psychiatry reform, because they really wanted to have an extra focus on open dialogue. And they asked us, who can we invite for that? So we suggested that they would invite Nick Putman, who did a large talk about open dialogue, and we also suggested to invite some Danish colleagues, Dorte and Sune, to have workshops. So we invited our companions, but we were asked to invite them. That was quite important, I think. And then there was at that time an Open Minds Award that was going around in Flanders, and as quite a surprise, we got that Open Minds Award because people thought that we were doing something that could be a sustainable innovation towards better mental health care with meaningful support for each other. That was the motivation that we got from it. And then together with a dear colleague of me, Peter Diering, we had a visit and an exchange in Aarhus in Denmark, because we realized that there were so much open dialogue initiatives in that little city that looked a bit like our own city in Bruges. We learned lots from it. And in 2020, we made final preparations for the first Open Dialogue Foundation training in Belgium. We got an active support from de Steunpunt Geestelijke Gezondheid of VZW Psyche. That's, if you translate it, is a focal point mental health. They wanted to give active support to the further development in open dialogue. And we never ceased to invite us in meetings with Belgian national government policymakers to have further dialogues and negotiations. At that time, from 2016 to 2020, so we already were practicing open dialogue as good as we could, and as we learned from the people themselves and from each other, and we really got much feedback from people. We, mails, and here are some experts from mails. But of course, it's not the case that you read it now, but maybe if you see some words in then you can see what they were so enthusiastic about. The first quote is from a family member. The second quote is from a person suffering a psychotic episode that he told us that after the Open Dialogue meeting that so much things were still resonating. And the third quote is from a professional that we included. He wasn't very keen on joining the Open Dialogue meeting at first, but afterwards he felt so at home, reminding him why he became a professional in the first place. That was part of a long email that we got from a family member. Of course, you don't have to read it, but what struck us is that we never explained the Open Dialogue principles to that family member. Of course, we didn't, but she explained it to us, what effect it had on her, and that all the Open Dialogue principles are in that quotes. Struck us, yeah. Then we learned a lot from other Open Dialogue projects. So I already told about our companions in Aarhus in Denmark. What struck us in their practice and in their Open Dialogue practice is that they consequently chose to not use the word patient or client, but burger, which is citizen or burger in Flemish, quite similar to the Danish word, because that reminded them each time again that any person who just wants to live, work, learn, and dwell somewhere together with others in connection with the people next to and around them is just a citizen in the first place. Not in the first place it's a patient or a client. We're all citizens with the same goals. We just want to live, work, learn, live together with other people. So in that vision, it was quite natural that other citizens, fellow citizens, are involved in meeting people because they are also overwhelmed by the situation, or are also concerned. Maybe there is some tension between them. And also us as professionals, our fellow citizens, within our backpack, maybe some expertise, but let's keep it in our backpack because in the first place, we are fellow citizens trying to reach out to other citizens and involving other people, and not only involving other people that are already involved, but also supporting them. We were quite motivated by that stories and by that practice in Aarhus, that help for people with a mental health vulnerability or in a crisis is really not just a problem of the mental health care system. All the people next to and around them are giving an active role if we really do what we can to involve them and support them. And it's quite good to see the effects about seeking a connecting language with everyone who is already involved, not only family members, but also neighbors, professionals, colleagues. And it reminded us that we had a project in Flanders. It's also a project in Holland on kwartiermaken. It's not easy to translate. If you translate it literally, that's coordinating. But it's also about fellow citizenship. It's about creating hospitable space for the otherness, difference between people. So we could feel that our project from Kwartiermaken and our practice development of open dialogue were quite interrelated, and that we could learn that from the Danish people and spread that vision on fellow citizenship and participation to every partnership with other professionals. Then from 2021, I already mentioned the support from the focal point mental health, but it became more formal because they asked me to join their team and have the chance that not only the open dialogue practice in the northwest of Flanders, but also the ambition in other regions that was really growing could be supported. And so I was asked to support other regions in that development of open dialogue practice. And they also gave me all the space that I wanted to connect with people and also for further international exchange. They really wanted to make possible what was further needed. And from 2021, I'm together with other people, I'm trying to give general support throughout regions and teams in all Flanders. Doing open dialogue introductions, interventions, co-creation sessions, always just bringing people together to explore open dialogue. I have worked already and I'm still working with more than 45 teams in a year. In 2021 alone now, and I'm also involved in open dialogue meetings and the preparation and the cooperation and the co-facilitating of open dialogue meetings. That's where I learned the most. And it was also part of the formal policy plan of the organization. And it was commissioned, that plan, by the Flemish government. So we have two governments in our region. We have the Flemish government and the national government. So we tried from the support that we got from the Flemish government to remind the Belgian government that they could be supportive too further. Then we co-organized and coordinated official open dialogue foundation trainings in Flanders. Excuse me. Having a cold, sorry. So 20 training days with Nick Putman. It's just the official open dialogue trainings, of course. He involved other international trainers, of course. What's important to say that the first open dialogue training was done in cooperation with two hospitals, a hospital in Bruges and a hospital in Bernhem. So they were also responsible. And they were also quite motivated, of course, but I think it's important that they felt responsible. And after that first open dialogue training, there were two other hospitals in another region, in Ghent and in Sint-Niklaas, who wanted to be responsible for the next, co-organizing the next training. And we are already in preparation of next training courses starting next year. And in each training, that's quite important, I think, even if those two hospitals feel responsible for co-organizing it, they only get 20 places for their own team members. Because we really find it important that the other participants come from other regions and could be peer workers, for instance. So they don't do it for themselves or for their own region or for their own hospital. They really have to be and feel responsible also for other regions. Yeah. And that's how it's further spread, of course, because in the first open dialogue foundation training, there were people from Ghent, and those people involved their managers from their hospital to organize the next training. So that's how we make things work. Then we have some specific partnerships. These are just examples, there are even more, of course, but there's a special partnership with the University Colleges of Leuven and Limburg. There's a research project on the development of open dialogue involving quite some teams in the whole of that province. We have a nice project together with the city of Ghent. It's a housing first project with so-called, what they call it, dedicated teams, and integrating open dialogue principles with kwartiermaken or fellow citizenship, like we learned from the people in ours. And together with the family platform, that's an organization that promotes family involvement in mental health. We have a Flemish project to actively involve peer workers with own lived experience, but also people with with family experience, and further development of open dialogue practices and trainings. They are joining the next training, and it's also connected that to a project they all had already. They call it Family Reflex. They wanted to promote a reflex to involve family. So we're trying to help the family platform with open dialogue on that family reflex ideas. And then, yeah, El Camino Bekenham, that's the one project on its way to becoming a Soteria house, also starting from open dialogue. Next to other examples of specific partnerships, I want to focus a little bit more on El Camino Bekenham because it's quite a special spin-off of our open dialogue adventures. It actually started from open dialogue meetings with a family. That family wanted to do something more. It seemed to be that they wanted that one of the houses in the family could be a Soteria house. But on our way of building the Soteria house, we involved other people with lived experience, people with family experience and professional experience with psychosis, and we organize, for instance, open circles every month. And it's quite important that we do that, it seems, because every month more and more people are joining that open circle, are inviting other people, and also in that open circles, people with lived experience, people with family experience, and people with professional experience are sharing together about their stories about psychosis, but also how it connects to life. And we do it in an open dialogue style, and people are quite enthusiastic about it. It helps us not to only spread open dialogue practice further, but also involve other people. But at the same time, it helps us of spreading the idea of Soteria houses in Flanders. So from that, we founded a Soteria Houses Flanders working group, and we have a manifesto. And even if you can't understand Flemish, you can sign that manifesto for Soteria houses. Well, already so many people, also managers from hospitals all around the country, that are willing to help us with it, and they have their name on the manifesto. It's quite something that that looks like a big movement. And among a growing Flemish network, we are building a hosting network open dialogue. That's something I have to explain, because we realized that if we wanted to build a Flemish network open dialogue, we should call it a hosting network open dialogue, because hosting was once chosen as the most typical Flemish word, because it's almost untranslatable, but it refers to eagerness, to drive, to hunger, to passion, as open dialogue practice does virtue to everyone involved, also to people in their professional role. So it reminds us why we are spreading open dialogue practice. And in that network, we are building alliances with the existing mental health organization and really co-creating some kind of leverage that keeps us moving and helps overcome new obstacles. It's really getting a strong social and professional network, but social is not, it's no coincidence that social is the first word here. So we're not starting from a professional network. We are joining as professionals in a social network. And we really feel connected as humans, as fellow citizens and companions to each other in all those practices. Because from that same network, that Flemish network that my organization that I work for is part of, we are actively developing open dialogue practice, of course, in collaboration with people with lived and family experience, but also connecting it to other community-based, right-based, and recovery-based practices like kwartiermaken. I mentioned my colleagues, like here Peter Dering, peer expertise education, Elke Harik, recovery colleges, Toon Derison, Soteria houses, again, Elke Harik, buddy project, and yeah, new companions that are organizing open circles, what we started in El Camino Beekegem and other regions. So not only dreaming of Soteria houses in that region, but also organizing open circles. We really realize that changing a system is changing a conversation. And so in many opportunities, in many meetings, also with colleagues in our own organizations, in our own teams, we are building up experience with open dialogue in another way, not only helping and supporting families, but also helping experiencing and tasting how this works in our own work. In many meetings, there are two facilitators, two colleagues who help us listen to everyone else with the simple question, what can we talk about, without agenda, just helping everyone to tell more, giving back words literally, like we learned in open dialogue practice, stimulating dialogues. Also there, experiencing that it helps us have horizontal, but also vertical internal dialogues. Also, those two facilitators are transparently reflecting on what they heard, told, and felt, so what has touched them in their own internal dialogue, and helping us to conclude and look ahead to what's further needed to the next time, until the next time. Of course, it feels uncomfortable at first because we have the habit of wanting to say and propose something too soon, be an expert in such a meeting, but we experience that it works better in this way. It's really has become an eye-opener because it strengthens our connection in our own teams and our further cooperation. And we are really experiencing that the way you do anything that works well is the way you do if you want, or you want to do everything else. I want to conclude with bringing back to hope. It may sound a bit soft, but I think it's really important to connect open dialogue to hope and to make it more universal, of course, than open dialogue. And therefore, this metaphor of the Haiyan typhoon that was almost 10 years ago, those pictures show us that people's goals can be reinforced, and that hope seems to depend on personal qualities and actions, people's own strengths, their own resilience, their own courage, their own vigor, but also external factors, available resources and companions. You see that on those two pictures. Those two aspects create hope. And that reminded us that hope is often confused with optimism, but hope isn't the same as optimism. Hope is optimism with roll-up sleeves together. That's something really different. If someone is rolling up their sleeves for someone else, other people start to roll their sleeves themselves, and also for themselves. And we happen to use a Flemish dialect word for together, with joint forces, that reminds us of that connection with hope. Tope. Tope is a word that reminds us on the word hope, but also meaning we have to do it together. So it reminds us of the importance of people's own strengths, resilience, resources, new goals, and meanings. And we have the Flemish word or Dutch word hulpverlener, that literally means help providers, that we are turning into another word that almost sounds the same, but means something really different, and that's hulpverleners, hope providers. So we are trying to reinvent ourselves and giving peer workers, of course, the chance to reinvent themselves, to not being just help providers, but to be hope providers, to be active resources and companions, because we really believe that we're all companions for each other. And that's not only in our role in mental health services, but also in society as fellow citizens, with all the other projects we are supporting. Open dialogue is something that invites us to think out of the box, about collaborations. It triggers team members to get off the beaten track and to act as an active participant, as a companion, and bringing companions together. Of course, it's an extra challenge to team leaders, involving much more flexibility in work planning, but also the team leaders say it's quite rewarding to make that flexibility possible. It's mainly an attitude, a vision, and an approach, not a panacea. So no protocol either, because we have to keep in mind that we should be reorganizing ourselves again and again, not repeating. There's so much difference. Maybe it sounds so a bit subtle, but there's so much difference in repeating something and doing it all over again. And that's something that we are reminding ourselves. And that's the way that we learn things from open dialogue practice. These are some questions that we discussing in every team. Mainly with how do we start or go on with open dialogue. And the first thing that we say to each other is the best way to start something, even apart from open dialogue, but also open dialogue, is to just start it. Don't delay it, just start. And bring together the right people. Don't do it alone. Never do something alone. Bring your own companions. Bring the people together. So we ask people what appeals to you, and of course that's the same idea of starting with why, and then how, and then further on what we could do differently, what appeals to you, and what can you do differently next time in open dialogue. And if open dialogue is learned from practice first, how can you build up those experiences? Which further opportunities do you see? What could be a possible next step, even before you are not completely ready, or you don't feel ready? What could you do to make that step possible?